Hello. Today we're going to talk about Pahalgam, the terrorist incident that happened in Kashmir, India, last week. We're going to discuss Pahalgam in context of Indian foreign policy. I know that might surprise a lot of people, but for reasons best known to me, I very strongly believe that Pahalgam is a result of India's failed foreign policy. And sure, it's a terrorist incident, but it has a very strong connection to how we've operated as a nation for the last 75 odd years. So let's start from the very beginning. Let's start with 1947, right? So 1947 was when India was dismembered. There were two countries that were created. One was Pakistan, the other was India. I shouldn't be saying that India was created because India was always there. So I think 1947 was when Pakistan came into being, and this is the first instance of India compromising on its territorial integrity. Now, India didn't really have an option, so I think there was no way out but to agree to the partition, and that's what happened. But just for sake of record, this is the first instance of India compromising on territorial integrity. Now, within 2 months, independence was August 15th, 1947. In October 1947, Pakistan invades Kashmir. Kashmir at that point is a princely state. The Maharaj of Kashmir signs the accession document to India, right? So the rule at that point was whoever is the king of the princely state can decide whether to go with Pakistan or whether to go with India or whether to stay independent. And Maharaja chose to go with India. And what does India do? India goes to the United Nations. There is a piece of Pakistan that is with a piece of Kashmir that is with Pakistan, and there's another with India, right? So this is prime example now of India actually giving up territory in a conflict, and that to a newly minted country. And within 2 months, we have this incident with Pakistan. This goes on for some period of time, but the end result is that we essentially have lost Indian soil. And then, unrelated to this incident, in 1950, the United States is has a proposal for India where United States is willing to consider India for a UN Security Council seat, which is earlier with China, and they want to offer it to India. And the Indian Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru refuses it in the spirit of Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai, which was the foreign policy at that time. Interestingly, China annexes Tibet, and Tibet is, with this annexation, China is now on India's borders in a very big way. And India, interestingly, is one of the first countries to recognize Tibet as a part of China. In 1962, the Chinese invade India, and India loses Aksai Chin. Um, right, so this is 1962. In 1965, Pakistan invades India, but there's no loss of territory. It's a war that India wins. In 1971, Pakistan launches Operation Searchlight in East Pakistan, which is now Bangladesh. And there's a long history to that. I'm going to skip the history. But essentially, as part of Operation Searchlight, there are millions of East Pakistanis who are killed by the Pakistan army. So the death toll in the end is 3 million, and scores of women raped. And India does nothing. There are about 10 million refugees who stream from Bangladesh or East Pakistan at that point into India, and India does absolutely nothing. Finally, Pakistan invades, attacks Indian air bases, and at that point, India steps in, and there's a full-fledged war with Pakistan. India wins that war. There is territory that is gained, and there are 93,000 Pakistan prisoners of war. And this is a really good situation for India to be in, and for India to push for some finality with respect to Kashmir. And India doesn't do that. 1971 should be seen as one of the biggest failures of Indian foreign policy. And pretty much anybody who's a student of foreign policy should take a good hard look at 1971. Now, Pakistan realizes at this point that getting into a full-fledged war with India is not really going to work. And under Zulfikar Ali Bhutto and Zia, they have this new program which is death by 1,000 cuts, and this is the start of terrorism in the Indian subcontinent. From an Indian standpoint, maybe it's been there in other places, but not in India. And it starts with the Khalistani movement in the early 80s, and in the mid to late 80s, this is part of what's happening in Kashmir, and it picks up steam in Kashmir in 1988, 89, and it's 1990. Is when it really peaks, right? And in 1990, this was when the exodus of the Kashmiri Pandits happened, right? So this is when the Kashmiri Pandits were ethnically cleansed from Kashmir Valley. There were lakhs of Kashmiri Pandits who had lived there for centuries, and they are made to leave Kashmir. It's 35 years since that incident, and it's 35 years since the Kashmiri Pandit has not gone back to their homes in Kashmir. Now, what does India do? So India, in this case as well, plays this eternal victim card in the United Nations, right? So if you really think about it, if you look at the excursions that Pakistan has in terms of war, it was 1948, 1965, 1971, and 1999 in Kargil. And China was 1962. And since 1947, India has never, been the country to, initiate war. Um, what is really interesting is that Pakistan is fighting really hard for disputed territory, and India has undisputed territory in Aksai Chin, but India is not doing anything at all. Um, so, um, and this is about wars. So let's talk about terror attacks, right? So if you're looking at terror attacks, you've got the Mumbai blast in 1993, right? This was about 257 people dead, 1,400 injured. Attacks in the passport office, Zaveri Bazaar, Hotel Sea Rock, and six other prominent places in Mumbai. Who's responsible for this? So this was Tiger Memon, and he was backed by Dawood Ibrahim. Dawood Ibrahim lives in Pakistan. He was last seen in Clifton in Karachi. His daughter is married to Javed Miandad's son. So he's a known commodity in Pakistan. So he's there in plain sight. And there's also Tiger Memon, who along with family moved to Pakistan. Then you have the Kandahar hijack. This is Indian Airlines flight 814. This is 1999, and Azhar Masood as well as Sheikh Omar are released as part of that negotiation, and both of them are no surprise in Pakistan. In the 2008 Mumbai attacks, we had 165 people who were dead, who were killed, and there was an attack on the Oberoi Hotel, Taj Mahal Hotel, Leopold Cafe, Chabad House, CST, the main railway terminus in Mumbai. And who was behind this attack? So this was Hafiz Saeed. There is interceptions of the conversations that the handlers had with the terrorists. We actually had a terrorist caught, Ajmal Kasab, who was traced all the way back to Pakistan. In parliament, Pakistani parliamentarians have accepted Pakistan's role. Nawab Sharif, who was the prime minister at some point, he has also accepted Pakistan's role in this incident. Um, Incidentally, India has extradited Tahur Rana, who was one of the prime accused, and he was extradited from the United States. But we've got Hafiz Saeed right across. the border, and there's a little chance of him, making it across. Right. So all of these people are, that I spoke about, whether it's Hafiz Saeed, Dawood Ibrahim, Tiger Memon, Azhar Masood, Sheikh Omar. All of these are known entities, and we know exactly where they are in Pakistan, right? And the Indian state has done absolutely nothing. Now let's contrast this with other countries. Let's take the United States. So the United States, looked long and hard for Osama bin Laden, and they finally find him. After a lot of work, they find him in a house in Abbottabad. They have two choppers, crossing into Pakistani airspace, getting into Abbottabad, taking him down and taking him out of Pakistan. There's also Israel. There's a Hamas leader, Ismail Haniya, and Israel took him out in Tehran, of all places, and they did it patiently, and they took their time, but they got somebody that they wanted. India, doesn't. India knows who the criminals are behind the terrorist activities. India knows where they are, but there's no action. Just like India just refuses to cross the border. So Indian foreign policy, to a large extent, this is all a reflection of Indian foreign policy and how we deal with incidents like this. And it's been, soft is a mild word. It's been absolutely backboneless. We did react when it came to Uri and Pulwama. So there's something that has been done recently, but prior to that, not a lot. And even whatever happened in Uri and Pulwama is I would say it's fairly minor, right? It's just what they call a surgical strike. They got a few terrorists, and that's the long and short of it. In terms of terrorist incidents in India, there were others. There's the Chhattis Singhpura massacre, which is 2000, the Parliament attack in 2001. There's Akshardham temple attack in 2002, Delhi bombings 2005. There were Mumbai train bombings in 2006, right? In all of these cases, all the Indian government has done is appeal to the United Nations, right? Um, and then let's talk about cross-border terrorism in Kashmir, which has been happening for 35 years. So India's got about 500,000 troops stationed in Kashmir for 35 years. So if look at the math, right? 500,000 troops. Let's say it costs $10 a day. That's literally 5 million a day. In a year, that's 1.8 billion, and that's if you're just taking $10 a day, which is not what it is, right? So if you take it to $100, it's about $18 billion a day. But if you really look at $18 billion a year, but it's a lot more than that. The number should be between 50 to $100 billion a year, and this is because there are costs and there's salaries. There's a lot of investment that the army makes in terms of infrastructure. There are hospitals. There's housing. There are training facilities. There's arms and ammunition. There's transportation. And these troops are rotated as well, so there's continuous training for new people that are coming in. And other than this cost, right, this material cost, there's also a human cost. There are people who are killed, there are people who are injured, people who are grievously injured. There is stress, time off from families. And when I say army, it also includes CRPF, BSF, other units that work very closely with the army in Kashmir. Now, I think when we talk about Pahalgam, we talk a lot about what is it that the Indian government has to say, what does the Indian public have to say, what does the Indian media have to say. But I'm really interested in understanding what the Indian Army has to say. The Indian Army has been stationed there for 35 years, and the question to them would be, hey, do you want to stay there for another 35 years, right? There've been a lot of positive development in Kashmir in the last 5 years, 5 to 7 years, actually. Since the abrogation of Article 370, and you've seen the stone throwing come to a minimum. You rarely hear of it these days. Tourism is on the high, but you still have troops, which pretty much mean that there is a problem, right? So this is something that everybody should be talking about. Is okay. What is it that you're thinking of in terms of the long-term strategy for Indian troops being in Kashmir. So when we talk about Pahalgam, we shouldn't be talking about Pahalgam in terms of this one single incident. And I don't think that is how the conversation is happening in India today, right? So a lot of people who are looking at Pahalgam and looking at Indian reactions and the reaction of the Indian government, this is not about this one incident, but this is a culmination of a lot of activities that have happened in the last 75 years, primarily in the last 35 years. There are two questions that usually arise, right? One is Pakistan, having denied any involvement whatsoever, right? So the Indian government and the Indian people believe the Pakistani government and the Pakistani people when they say that Pakistan has no hand in Pahalgam. So we believe them as much as the United States government and the American people believed the Pakistani state and the Pakistan people when they said that Osama bin Laden is not in Pakistan, right? So, well, the other question that keeps coming up is, hey, Pakistan is ready for a joint investigation with India about this incident. Now, there have been previous incidents that have happened. I've given you a huge list. And for all of these investigations, India has cooperated with Pakistan, has given them proof, and nothing has come of it, right? So for Pakistan to say, hey, let's have one more inquiry, I don't think there's anybody in the Indian side, who has any interest whatsoever in this, right? So now the question here is now, what is the Modi government actually going to do? And I don't know what they're going to do, but I can tell you for sure that, um, whatever they do will, define what Indian foreign policy is going to be from now onwards. And possibly, it could also define or decide who wins the elections in 2029. Let's see what happens. Thank you.